Emma stared at her phone screen, her thumb hovering over the send button. The message glowed back at her in the dim light of her bedroom. 3 years of friendship, countless shared dreams, and now this moment that would change everything. Outside her window, the autumn rain tapped against the glass like urgent fingers trying to get her attention. Daniel's name sat at the top of the chat, his profile picture showing that familiar crooked smile that had gotten her through so many difficult days. The message she had typed was simple, yet it carried the weight of everything she had never said. "Before you leave tomorrow, I need to tell you something. Can we meet at the old coffee shop? There's something I should have said long ago." She had rewritten it 12 times. First, it was too casual. Then too desperate. Now it sat there, perfectly balanced between hope and fear. Her heart raced as she thought about tomorrow. Daniel was leaving for his new job in Singapore, an opportunity he couldn't pass up. The investment firm had offered him everything he had worked for, and she had smiled and congratulated him even as her heart broke into pieces. They had met in university, both studying finance but dreaming of different futures. Daniel wanted to conquer the corporate world, while Emma dreamed of starting her own sustainable business. Despite their different paths, they had become inseparable. Late-night study sessions turned into deep conversations about life. Coffee breaks became their ritual, always at the same worn wooden table in the corner of the campus cafe. Emma remembered the first time she realized her feelings had changed. It was during their final year, when Daniel had stayed up all night helping her prepare for her business pitch presentation. He had fallen asleep at his laptop, and she had watched him for a moment, seeing not just her best friend but someone she couldn't imagine living without. But the timing was never right. He was dating Sarah then, and Emma buried her feelings deep, convinced that their friendship was too precious to risk. Now Sarah was long gone, moved on to someone else, and Daniel was single. But he was also leaving. The job offer had come suddenly, and he had accepted it with the enthusiasm of someone who had been waiting for this chance his whole life. Emma had helped him apartment hunt online, had listened to him excitedly plan his new life, all while her own heart quietly shattered. Her roommate, Maya, had been the one to finally push her to act. "You'll regret it forever if you don't tell him," Maya had said last night, holding Emma as she cried. "Even if nothing comes of it, at least you'll know you tried." The message on her screen seemed to pulse with possibility. Emma took a deep breath and pressed send. The little delivered notification appeared, and she felt a mix of relief and terror. It was done. Tomorrow would bring either a new beginning or a final ending, but at least she would know. She placed her phone on the nightstand and tried to sleep, but her mind raced with scenarios. What if he felt the same way? What if he didn't? What if he didn't even show up? The rain continued its steady rhythm against her window, and somewhere in the city, Daniel's phone buzzed with her message. Morning came too quickly. Emma woke to find her phone battery had died during the night. She plugged it in and waited anxiously for it to power up. When the screen finally lit up, she saw 3 messages from Maya asking how it went, one from her mother about Sunday dinner, and nothing from Daniel. Her heart sank. Maybe he was just busy with last-minute packing. She got ready slowly, choosing her clothes carefully. The blue dress he had once said brought out her eyes. Her favorite boots. She wanted to look like herself, but the best version. The coffee shop was only a 10-minute walk from her apartment, but each step felt like a mile. The autumn air was crisp, and the leaves crunched under her feet as she made her way through the familiar streets. The coffee shop was exactly as it always was, the smell of freshly ground beans mixed with cinnamon, the soft jazz playing in the background. The barista, Tom, gave her a friendly wave. She ordered 2 cappuccinos, one for her and one for Daniel, just like always. Then she sat at their usual table and waited. 9 o'clock came and went. Then 9:30. Emma's coffee grew cold as she stared at the door, willing it to open. She checked her phone repeatedly, but there were no new messages. Maybe he was running late. Maybe his flight had been rescheduled. Maybe he was just scared, like she had been. By 10 o'clock, the truth began to settle in her chest like a stone. He wasn't coming. Emma paid for the untouched coffees and walked out into the bright morning sun. The city continued its usual chaos around her, unaware that her world had just shifted on its axis. She pulled out her phone to check one more time and noticed something strange. The message she had sent last night showed as delivered, but when she scrolled up, she couldn't find it in their conversation history. Her hands trembled as she opened her sent messages. It wasn't there. Confused, she checked her drafts, and her heart stopped. There it was. Her carefully crafted message, sitting unsent in her drafts folder. But she had pressed send. She remembered the delivered notification. She remembered the relief of finally doing it. Then she saw it. Above the draft, a small notification she hadn't noticed before. Message deleted. Her mind raced. She must have accidentally deleted it in her nervous state last night, or maybe her phone had glitched. Either way, Daniel had never received her invitation. He had no idea she was waiting for him. He was probably at the airport right now, boarding his plane, completely unaware that she had tried to change everything. Emma ran. She ran through the streets, her boots pounding against the pavement, her breath coming in gasps. She had to get to the airport. She had to tell him. The taxi ride felt endless, traffic crawling as she watched the minutes tick by on her phone. Daniel's flight was at noon. It was now 11:15. When she finally reached the international terminal, she was met with a sea of travelers. She searched frantically for him, checking every gate, every coffee stand, every waiting area. Security wouldn't let her past without a ticket, and she stood at the barrier, scanning the crowds beyond. Then she saw him. He was there, in the security line, his familiar figure unmistakable even from a distance. She called out his name, but her voice was lost in the noise of the airport. She waved frantically, trying to catch his attention. But he was looking down at his phone, probably checking his boarding pass. Emma watched helplessly as he moved through security, disappearing from view. She stood there for a long moment, her heart breaking all over again. The opportunity had passed. The words she had wanted to say would remain unspoken. She turned to leave, defeated, when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. Just got through security. I looked for you everywhere this morning. I wanted to say goodbye properly, but I couldn't find you. I even went by the coffee shop, but you weren't there. I guess this is it. Take care of yourself, Em. You'll always be my favorite person. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she read his words. He had looked for her. He had wanted to say goodbye, but they had missed each other. Two ships passing in the chaos of change. She typed a response, then deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. What could she say now that would make any difference? In the end, she settled for something simple. Have a safe flight. Singapore is lucky to have you. She pressed send, making sure this time it went through. Then she added one more message. You'll always be my favorite person too. As she walked back through the airport, Emma felt the weight of what might have been. But also, strangely, a sense of peace. They had missed their moment, but their friendship, their connection, that was real. Maybe someday, when the universe was ready, they would find their way back to each other. Or maybe this was how their story was meant to unfold. With love unspoken but understood, carried in their hearts across oceans and time. The autumn sun was bright as she stepped outside the airport. Life would go on. She would build her business, chase her dreams, and carry the memory of what almost was. And somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, Daniel would be starting his new adventure, carrying the same memories, the same unfinished story. Emma took a deep breath and headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new chances to be brave. But today, she would let herself grieve for the goodbye that never happened, for the words that were never said, and for the message that changed everything by never being sent. 6 months had passed since Daniel's plane disappeared into the clouds above the city. Emma stood in her new office, looking out at the skyline that had become her daily view. The sustainable packaging company she had dreamed of was now real, with 3 employees and more orders than she had dared to hope for. Success tasted different than she had imagined. It was sweeter in some ways, lonelier in others. Her phone sat on her desk, and she found herself glancing at it more often than she should. Daniel still messaged her regularly, photos of Singapore's glittering towers, updates about his projects, complaints about the humidity. She responded with pictures of her office, celebrating small victories, sharing the struggles of entrepreneurship. They maintained their friendship across the miles. But something had shifted. There was a carefulness now, an invisible line neither of them crossed. Emma often wondered if he ever thought about that morning, about the coffee shop where she had waited. She had never told him about the deleted message, about her failed attempt to change their story. It seemed pointless now, a detail that would only add regret to what was already a complicated distance. Maya knocked on her office door, pulling Emma from her thoughts. "The investor meeting is in 10 minutes, she said. Maya had joined the company as operations manager, her business degree finally being put to use. She had also appointed herself as Emma's unofficial therapist, though Emma tried to avoid those conversations. "Thanks, I'll be right there," Emma said, straightening her blazer. The meeting was important. If they could secure this funding, they could expand production and hire more staff. She pushed thoughts of Daniel aside and focused on the presentation she had prepared. Across the world, Daniel sat in his Singapore apartment, the city lights twinkling below. His laptop was open to Emma's company website, which he checked more often than he would admit. He had watched her build her dream from afar, feeling both proud and strangely disconnected. The job that had seemed so perfect 6 months ago now felt hollow. The money was excellent, the work challenging. But something essential was missing. His colleague, James, had invited him out for drinks again, but Daniel had declined. He preferred spending his evenings alone, working late, or exploring the city with his camera. Photography had become his escape, a way to process the homesickness he hadn't expected to feel so acutely. He opened his message thread with Emma, scrolling back through months of conversation. There were gaps now, places where one of them had typed something and then deleted it, leaving only the evidence of "Daniel is typing," frozen in time. He wondered what words had been swallowed, what thoughts had been deemed too dangerous to share. The truth was, Daniel had almost not gotten on that plane. Standing in the airport that morning, he had felt an overwhelming urge to turn around, to find Emma and tell her everything. Tell her that the job didn't matter, that Singapore could wait, that she was the only future he really wanted. But courage had failed him, and he had walked through security instead, convincing himself that this was the mature choice, the responsible path. He started typing a message to her now. "Saw your interview in Techstart magazine. You looked happy." He paused, then added, "I'm proud of you." His finger hovered over the send button. Just as Emma's had 6 months ago, there was so much more he wanted to say, that he missed their coffee meetings, that Singapore felt empty without her laugh, that he had made a mistake, but he sent only what he had typed, maintaining the careful distance they had established. Emma replied within minutes, as she always did. "Thanks. It's been crazy here. How's the Lee account going?" Safe topics, professional updates. Nothing that touched the heart of what lay between them. Daniel's phone rang, interrupting his melancholy. It was his boss, Richard, calling about an urgent client issue. He switched into work mode, pushing personal thoughts aside. This was his life now. This was what he had chosen. Back in her office, Emma's investor meeting had gone better than expected. They had not only agreed to fund, but had offered more than she had asked for. Her team celebrated with champagne, and Emma smiled and toasted their future. But as the bubbles tickled her throat, she thought about how she had once imagined celebrating moments like this with Daniel by her side. That night, Emma worked late, using business as an excuse to avoid going home to her empty apartment. She was updating spreadsheets when an email notification popped up. It was from a tech conference in Singapore, inviting her to speak about sustainable business practices. Her heart jumped. Singapore. The universe seemed to be playing a cruel joke. She stared at the invitation for a long time. It would be good for business. The Asian market was growing, and this could open new opportunities. But it would also mean seeing Daniel, being in his city, possibly reopening wounds that had just begun to heal. She closed the email without responding, deciding to sleep on it. Meanwhile, Daniel was having his own moment of decision. His contract was up for renewal, but the company was also offering him a position in their New York office. It would mean leaving Singapore, being closer to home, closer to Emma. But it would also mean admitting that this adventure had not been what he hoped, that he had been running from something rather than toward it. He walked out onto his balcony, feeling the humid night air wrap around him. The city sprawled endlessly below. Beautiful and foreign. He thought about Emma's face that last day. How she had smiled when she said goodbye. How something in her eyes hadn't matched that smile. He had replayed that moment so many times, wondering what he had missed. His phone buzzed with a message from his mother. "Your old room is always here if you need it," she wrote, as if sensing his turmoil across the miles. Mothers always knew. He smiled sadly and typed back, "Thanks, Mom, I'm figuring things out." Emma finally left her office at midnight, the streets quiet as she walked to her car. She had made her decision about Singapore. She would go. Not for Daniel, she told herself, but for her business. It was the professional thing to do. The fact that her heart raced at the thought of seeing him was irrelevant. She drafted an email accepting the invitation, scheduled it to send in the morning, and drove home through empty streets. The radio played a song they used to love, and she let herself sing along, remembering easier times when the future had seemed so clear. Neither of them slept well that night. Daniel dreamed of airports and missed connections. Emma dreamed of deleted messages and words unspoken. Both woke before dawn, reaching for their phones, checking for messages that hadn't come. The dance continued, two hearts circling each other across oceans. Neither brave enough to step closer, both unable to truly let go. The sun rose on another day of careful distances and professional updates. But change was coming. Emma's trip to Singapore was set for next month. Daniel's decision about New York loomed. The universe was slowly spinning them back toward each other. Though neither knew if they would have the courage to grab the second chance when it came, Emma looked at her calendar, counting the days until Singapore. Daniel stared at his contract renewal, pen in hand. Both wondered if some mistakes could be undone, if deleted messages could be recovered, if the goodbye that never happened might somehow lead to a hello that could change everything. The Singapore conference hall was packed with entrepreneurs and innovators from across Asia. Emma adjusted her microphone, looking out at the sea of faces. Her presentation on sustainable packaging had gone well, earning enthusiastic applause and several business card exchanges. But her mind wasn't fully present. It kept drifting to the fact that Daniel was somewhere in this city, just a few miles away. She had been in Singapore for 2 days and hadn't told him. It felt like a betrayal of their friendship, but she needed time to prepare herself. Every street corner might reveal him. Every coffee shop could be the setting for an accidental reunion. Her heart stayed in a constant state of alert. After her session ended, Emma escaped to the hotel rooftop bar. The city sparkled below, and she nursed a glass of wine while trying to gather her courage. Her phone sat face down on the table, Daniel's contact information just a tap away. She had typed and deleted a dozen messages. "I'm in Singapore." Too abrupt. "Guess where I am?" Too playful. "Can we talk?" Too serious. As she sat there, wrestling with words, Daniel was in his office 10 blocks away, staring at his computer screen. James had mentioned the tech conference, had even suggested they attend some sessions. Daniel had declined, claiming too much work. The truth was more complicated. He had seen the speaker list. Emma's name had jumped out at him like a beacon. She was here, in his city, and she hadn't told him. The hurt was sharper than he expected. They had promised to always be honest with each other, to maintain their friendship despite the distance. But she had come to Singapore and chosen silence. Maybe she was finally moving on, creating boundaries he had been too afraid to establish himself. He pushed back from his desk, suddenly unable to sit still. The office walls felt like they were closing in. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the elevator, needing air, needing movement, needing anything but this crushing feeling in his chest. His feet carried him without conscious thought. And soon, he found himself outside the conference hotel. Looking up at the building where she had spent her day, Emma finished her wine and decided she couldn't be a coward anymore. She picked up her phone and typed simply, "I'm in Singapore. Room 2012 at the Marina Conference Hotel. I understand if you don't want to see me." She hit send before she could change her mind, then immediately regretted it. What if he was angry? What if he brought his new girlfriend? What if he didn't come at all? Daniel's phone buzzed as he stood on the sidewalk. He read her message once, twice, 3 times. She was 20 floors above him. All the words he had wanted to say for 6 months suddenly crowded his throat. He walked into the hotel lobby before he could talk himself out of it. The elevator ride felt endless. Daniel watched the numbers climb, each floor marking another second to decide what to say. When he reached the 20th floor, his legs felt unsteady. He found room 2012 and knocked before his courage could fail. Emma opened the door. And for a moment, they just looked at each other. 6 months of careful distance collapsed in an instant. She looked exactly the same, and completely different. Success had given her a new confidence. But her eyes held the same warmth he remembered. "Hi," she said softly. "Hi," he replied. They stood there awkwardly until Emma stepped aside to let him in. The hotel room was impersonal, neutral territory for what felt like a conversation that would change everything. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" Daniel asked, trying to keep accusation out of his voice. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, looking at her hands. "I didn't know how. We've been so careful. Keeping things light. I didn't want to disrupt your life here." "Disrupt?" Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Emma, my life here is nothing but disruption. I wake up every day in this beautiful city and feel like I'm living someone else's dream." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Emma looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time since he had entered. "I deleted a message to you," she said suddenly. "That night before you left. I asked you to meet me at the coffee shop. I was going to tell you." She trailed off, the confession harder than she had imagined. Daniel's face went pale. "Tell me what?" "That I loved you. That I've loved you for years. That I couldn't let you leave without knowing." The words tumbled out. 6 months of silence finally breaking. "But I accidentally deleted it, and you never got it. I waited at the coffee shop, and when you didn't come, I thought it was the universe telling me to let you go." Daniel sank into the chair across from her, his head in his hands. "I went to the coffee shop that morning," he said quietly. "I wanted to tell you the same thing, but you weren't there. I thought you were avoiding goodbye because it would hurt too much." Emma's eyes filled with tears as the truth of their missed connection became clear. They had both been there, both looking for each other, both carrying the same unspoken love. The deleted message had changed everything and nothing at all. "I've been miserable here," Daniel continued. "Every success feels hollow because I can't share it with you the way I want to. I take pictures of beautiful places and think about how you should be seeing them with me. I've been offered a position in New York, and the only reason I'm considering it is because it's closer to you." Emma moved from the bed, kneeling in front of his chair. She took his hands in hers, feeling the familiar warmth she had missed so much. "We're idiots," she said, half laughing, half crying. "We've wasted 6 months being noble and distant when we could have been honest." Daniel pulled her up, and suddenly they were standing close, the way they should have stood that morning at the airport. "I love you," he said simply. "I've loved you since university, through every boyfriend you had, every date I went on, every moment we spent pretending to be just friends." "I love you too," Emma whispered. "I'm sorry about the message. I'm sorry about everything." "No," Daniel said, touching her face gently. "Maybe it had to happen this way. Maybe we both needed to know what life was like without each other, to understand what we really want." They kissed then, 6 months of longing poured into a moment that felt both like an ending and a beginning. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying and laughing simultaneously. "So, what do we do now?" Emma asked. "You live here. I live there." "Nothing has really changed. Everything has changed," Daniel corrected. "Now we know. Now we can make decisions based on truth instead of fear." He paused, then smiled the crooked smile she had missed so much. "Take the New York job?" Emma suggested, reading his thoughts. "Come with me to explore Singapore first," he countered. "You're here for 3 more days. Let me show you the city through my eyes. Then we can figure out the rest." Emma nodded, feeling lighter than she had in months. They spent the rest of the evening talking. Really talking. The way they used to. About the months apart. About their fears and dreams. About the future they might build together. The careful distance was gone, replaced by the easy intimacy they had always shared, now deepened by acknowledged love. Later, as they walked through the Singapore night markets, hands entwined, Emma thought about the message that had started it all. The deletion that had seemed like such a disaster had led them here, to a love tested by distance and strengthened by truth. "I'm glad the message deleted," she said suddenly. Daniel looked at her in surprise. "I mean it," she continued. "If you had gotten it, if we had met that morning, everything would have been different. Maybe you wouldn't have taken the job. Maybe I wouldn't have thrown myself into my company. We might have always wondered what we gave up for each other." Daniel squeezed her hand. "And now we know. We know who we are apart. So we can choose to be together." 3 days later, at the airport again, they stood at the departure gate. But this time, everything was different. Daniel would finish his contract in Singapore, then take the New York position. Emma would expand her company internationally, with Singapore as her Asian base. They would rack up frequent flyer miles and video calls. But they would do it together. No more deleted messages, no more unspoken words. "I'll see you in 3 weeks, Emma said, memorizing his face. 3 weeks, he agreed. "And this time, I'll be the one waiting at the coffee shop." They kissed goodbye, but it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a promise, a beginning, a love story that had taken the long way around but had finally found its path. As Emma boarded her plane, she thought about the butterfly effect of one deleted message. How a technological glitch had broken them apart only to make their reunion stronger. Sometimes the goodbyes that never happen lead to the hellos that change everything. And sometimes love finds a way, even when messages are deleted, even across oceans, even when 2 people are too scared to speak their truth. Emma and Daniel had learned that the hard way, but they had learned it together, and that made all the difference.